I don't like using the mic. Aaron, can you hear me in the back? Yeah? Hear me okay? Is it moral to smoke a cigarette? Is it moral to smoke a cigarette? What do you think? So I asked once a declared atheist this question, and this is a discussion we had. Quote, I asked him, my friend, my atheist friend, is it moral to smoke a cigarette? So he responded and said, I assume you mean in the presence of others. And in the presence of others, it's definitely immoral because he's clearly harming other people's lungs. Terrible statistics as to how many people die every year, even only in Israel, for passive smoking, as it's called. And as a result, it's clearly immoral. I said, no, I don't mean smoking in the presence of somebody else. I mean smoking on the beach when there's absolutely no one around. He said, well, why in the world would that be immoral? I said, because he's harming somebody else's lungs. He says, what are you talking about? I said, the person's lungs who's smoking, they're not his. He says, what are you talking about? I said, did he make the lungs? He said, no. So I said, clearly the lungs belong to he who made the lungs. He said, wait, you're making an assumption that I believe in what you believe. I said, I'm not making any assumptions. I'm trying to clarify the difference of perspective between me and you. Now, this conversation actually never took place. It took place, but in my mind. And I actually wrote it recently in an essay that I recently wrote. Some of you may have read it, in response to some article that some professor in YU wrote. But in any case, why am I starting off with this? Because this question brings out the question and the understanding that the freedom of choice, free will, which defines in our sources a human being, and the world loses its meaning if there is no freedom of choice. And maybe the most important source on the matter is the Rambam, the way he positions Bechira Chofshit, freedom of choice, free will, conscious human free will as the basis of all meaning of human life, and the centerpiece of this entire universe. That my Bechira, my freedom of choice, doesn't begin in choosing between good deeds and bad deeds, rather begins in how I choose to interpret the world around me. Because the example I brought from the question, listen very carefully, is there's an incredible, endless moral implications as to whether there is or isn't God. If God exists or God doesn't exist, there is endless moral nafkaminas. I gave one example. I'll give a much harsher example. Is it moral to commit suicide? If I'm a declared atheist, if Amos Luban was a declared atheist, not just declared, I would be, bemet, an atheist, bemet, I wouldn't see any problem with committing suicide. I'm the balabait of my own life. Nobody owns me, and I have every right to take my life. Now, how many people in the United States of America would let somebody, their friend, commit suicide for a girl that said goodbye to him? Unfortunately, my simcha b'chol yom. But what? Let him do it. Why are you calling a psychiatrist? Why are you putting him in handcuffs? Why are you calling the police? You believe that a person's life is owned by him. I don't. I believe in Chazal, who claim, nobody asked you whether you want to be formed, and nobody asked you whether you want to be born, and nobody asked you whether you want to live, and nobody asked you whether you want to die, for sure not. Maybe a surprise to many of us, and nobody's going to ask us whether we want to give a din v'cheshbon lifnei melech malchei amlakim hakadosh baruch hu on our very last day. And therefore, I'm trying to emphasize at the beginning of the speech that the whole discussion about God, proving God, I don't accept. I'm negating it at first, at the beginning of the day. I think it's a mistake of an understanding of what Emunah is. If God can be proved, it takes away from the whole discussion that we're meant to be having. My moral choice begins in how I choose to interpret the world. When my wife and I wanted to be accepted to the Moshav in the Golan where we live today, we had to go through this kind of a test that people go through. They go get a job, they want to be accepted to a yeshuv, And in the test, one of the things, this is known, it has even a name in psychology, I don't remember right now, you get a certain picture, and you're supposed to interpret the picture, and that's a picture that can be interpreted in different ways. Interpret the picture, I'll tell you who you are. That's Olam Hazeh. I'm here to share my perspective, that's my understanding. Olam Hazeh is a world which is given to us, handed over to us in a way that's not so clear. And it's open to enough interpretation that different people can read different things into it. And that's called in our sources in the Zohar, Olam Hazeh is called Alma Desfeika, the world of doubt, the world of uncertainty. Those of you familiar with modern physics, even physicists come around to say that this is the world of with an underlying principle of uncertainty. The world of uncertainty means things are not clear-cut here. Olam Ha'emet, after we die, is where things are actually clear-cut. And why are things not clear-cut? Because they are inviting you to interpret. Interpret my world, I'll tell you who you are. You understand why the term proof is not relevant? What I want to use this time, shorter time than I was hoping, is to devote a little time to how to address this day, how to address the issue of Emunah for now, for today, for life. A few introductions, and this is introduction number 1. I say, if you ask me, let go of that term. It's misleading. It caused people negative reaction. Let go of borrowing this concept from science that you can prove God. What, yes? We'll see soon, in a few minutes. I'd like to get to this whole point from another angle. And for that, don't be scared, and I wouldn't cause people to fall asleep. We have a lot of sources. We're not going to look up the sources. I'm going to be referring to the sources, and the older people in the crowd can look as I speak. If you don't want to look, you don't have to. Keep the notes. You can look at it afterwards. You can do chazara for the speech. I hope they're enough. If not, so just share with the person next to you. The reason it's important for me to make a source sheet is to show us the discussion here is not flaky. It's real, it's rooted in our sources, and the sources are here, you can look at them. As I speak, you can look at them later on, you can go over them at night. You don't have to keep them, you can put them in Geniza or give them back to me. I think it's important to be aware that the sources are present. If you want, you can follow in together with me. Okay, I'm just waiting for the source sheets to get all the way back. Okay, please look inside in source number 1. I underlined this beautiful, thought-provoking pasuk that puts this entire day and the entire topic of Emunah in a proper context. Source number 1, Sefer Mishlei, the wisest of all people, according to our sources, Shlomo HaMelech. I underlined it. Look inside with Perek Bet, pasuk Daled. Im tevakshena, those of you who learned Mesilat Yesharim will be familiar. He quotes this pasuk. Im tevakshena kakesef. וחמטמונים תחפשנה, אז תבין יראת השם ודעת אלוקים תמצא. Most sources we're not going to be seeing inside. A few, yes, this is one of the only. I'm reading inside and I'm explaining in English. אם תבקשנה ככסף, if you ask for it, as you ask for silver, money. וחמטמונים תחפשנה, and you search for it as you search and dig for treasure. אז תבין, אז you hear, then and only then, Tavin Yirat Hashem, will you understand what it means, Yirat Hashem, the awareness of God. V'dat Elokim Timtza, and you'll start the process of getting to know HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is the pasuk, and this is saying the same thing we said before, but coming at it from another angle. What do we learn from this pasuk? The first thing we learn from this pasuk is that posture of this day cannot be sitting back in a chair. If you sit back in a chair when you're coming to address HaKadosh Baruch Hu, number 1, you'll fall asleep. The person who's speaking right now tends to be a little boring. Other people will be also possibly boring for you. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says like this: if you're not going to put in your kishkes, you're not going to find me. Because I designed, again, the world in a way that I hide in it. כתוב בספרים הקדושים, ידוע, the older people in the room know this, עולם מלשון העלם. Hashem ne'elam ba'olam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is hiding in the world. And if as such you can completely take advantage of this world and read it as you wish, I don't read any God into it. Of course I prefer not to read any God into it because I don't like to have a balabai telling me what to do. I like being my own free camper. I grew up on this concept. Western secular, especially liberal age of today, is all about that. Come Torah and says, and it's hard for us to hear that. We cringe. The Western liberal side in us cringes to hear that I don't own myself and I cannot take my life. And somebody else made me according to Torah, and I owe my definitions of who I am to Him. Hashem hides in the world. I'm taking it a step forward, deeper, listen carefully. I'm not like a woman who respects herself. You know how often guys will say, it's already a few dates and it's getting serious, but she's not opening herself up. And I tell the guy she's a good Jewish girl who respects herself. She's tsanua. Kol kvoda bat melech pnima. You want a sleazy, cheap girl, even in her speech, that in the first date she tells you all the trouble at home? Believe me, you don't want that. A woman who respects herself shares her inner world with he who she really, truly, over time learned to trust. You want to find me? You have to put your kishkas into it. I'm hiding in the world. And if you're going to find me, it's if you're going to be investing. Investing today is trying to remain awake for every single one of the speeches. Not every speech will be your cup of tea. Not every speech exactly. But chaval to miss out on even one sentence of the day. Your job is to collect afterwards all the things you heard and try to cook a cholent out of it. Your cholent. Based on the ingredients that many different people told you. I'm too precious, God says. I'm too expensive for me to be found like that lying in the street. You want to find me? You have to invest. Effort, thought, care, contemplation, reflection. If you think that you're going to go and hear somebody prove God to you, that's immaturity. I'm telling you straight out. A physicist will prove God to me. If that's the case, God will remain at the Matan auditorium and in the head of that physicist, and within a few weeks and a few months, and definitely when you're in front of a computer screen and you're in a conflict whether to do or not to do, as Yosef HaTzadik was, or to watch or not to watch, definitely when you're outside of the realm of Eretz Yisrael, God is not going to be there because He's stuck in the auditorium because He was proven to me by a physicist. I reveal myself to those who care to look for me. That's this pasuk. You know what? This pasuk, good enough. We can finish now. If one understands and internalizes that, it's a lesson for life. God is to the extent that you invest in. The extent you invest, that's the extent that you discover. The extent you don't, you won't. And if you'll tell me so many people, from people out there, you don't get a sense that they have an awareness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and you don't have a sense that they have Yirat Shamayim in the true sense of the word, and then you don't get a sense that they're living in front of Hashem. They may want that, but they're not living that way. I'll have to say that unfortunately I agree. And I've quoted here before, a member in the Haredi world in Israel, who grew up in the Haredi world, who went through sexual abuse when he was younger, I mentioned this, and today he works for years with kids, boys, girls, off the derech in the Haredi world. And the title of the interview with him was, I meet endless amount of people in the Haredi world who have no clue who God is. So we have a problem in our generation, to be emphasized. Maybe other generations it was different. Today there's a problem. And if one thinks that when a certain firm-looking garments and going through the motions, I can find myself in front of God, I will not find myself in front of Hashem if I don't put my kishkas into it. I say this with full confidence and full clarity, and I'll completely reject anybody who would argue with me, as big as a Rosh Yeshiva he may be. And if he may say, as I know some say, in our yeshiva we meet God in Shorsh and Agachat HaPara, only, I'll say, you have a problem, and you're not addressing real issues in the hearts of your students. And don't come wondering and making conventions on chinuch, what's wrong with us? Why do we have students with smartphones? Let's get to the same point from a third angle. Is there anybody in this room, don't be embarrassed, is there anybody in this room who actually doubts that he has a mind? I don't doubt that I have a mind, and if some atheist philosopher will come and doubt, I'll take a hike, jump into the closest lake, or go see Rabbi Eitan Koren, he's pretty good. I don't doubt the fact that I have a mind. I don't doubt that anybody in this room actually has a mind. Now you can say, Bishlama, I don't doubt that I have a mind. I experience the fact that I have a mind. I don't need anybody to prove or not prove. It's irrelevant to me. I know and I experience and it's clear to me. So therefore, I have no doubt that Nady also has a mind. I experience him every week, a few times a week. Baruch Hashem, is his chut. Back and forth, he talks, he smiles, he responds. I don't need proof that he has a mind. In fact, we don't know even what the matter, what material minds are made up of. How can I prove something that I don't know what it is? The brain? That's something else. I'm not talking about the brain. I'm not talking about the hardware. I'm talking about the mental experience of the mind. That if anybody here does not in fact doubt, like I don't doubt, and we don't doubt about our friend. Why? I don't have a proof that Nady has a mind. But his smile, his responses, the way he speaks, the way he conducts himself, testifies that he has a mind. It doesn't prove, what is this, mathematics? Physics? That's a proof? I saw Nady responding. Oh, it's a proof. It's not a proof. It's a mistake of language. It testifies. His behavior testifies. If chas v'shalom somebody lies flat dead and doesn't show any sign of life, he's either asleep or dead. Nothing is testifying for life. But if the person is responding, speaking, smiling, responding to surroundings, we assume that he has, not only is alive, but he has a mind. That's the way we conduct ourselves. That's the way we live. We have to doubt even that in this generation, that the most biggest avodah zarah is doubt anything. Let's show everybody how much we can even doubt even more so. I'm even a bigger doubter. Paganism 2020. Avodah zarah 2020. Say when it comes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because if you may know, and if not, just glimpse for a second at the Gemara on Masechet Brachot. We're not going to be reading it inside, but afterwards you can, and I highly recommend that you do. The Gemara on Masechet Brachot, on the first page, we're on the first page, page number 1, source number 4. Thank you to Yosef Kramer who helped me with the source sheet. The underlying part there, the Gemara elaborates on the 5 different ways that the neshama of a human being, the neshama to the body, corresponds to God and the world. God and the world is like the neshama and the body, on the basis of David HaMelech saying this, on 5 different ways. By the way, according to the Mekubalim, the neshama has 5 different parts. The Gemara won't say that. We'll leave it for somebody like the Zohar to say. But the Gemara hints to that on 5 different ways, just like the neshama can't be seen, but it can see. God sees but cannot be seen. Just like the neshama fills up the entire body, God fills up the entire world. Just like the neshama gives life and sustenance to the entire body, so too God. Kedai to learn it inside, thought-provoking with no end. What the Gemara is claiming is not my line, it's Chazal's line. God is the mind of the world. I'm dafka using a more secular-oriented term as the mind and not neshama. It sounds too frum. Okay? So we'll use the term mind. In the same way that I don't doubt that Nady has a mind, because his behavior testifies, his smile does. The world doesn't prove God. Creation testifies to its creator. That's the language. I beg people to internalize it. I don't know a source biblically that talks for proofs for God. I do know sources that talk about the creation testifying to God. That I know many sources, and we'll elaborate on it in a moment. In other words, it's just like a puppet show. We have a doubt that somebody's pulling the strings. Do I need a mathematical proof? Do I have to bring a logic professor to deal with this? I see the puppets moving. I know somebody's pulling the strings. the more intelligently they move, the more intelligently they testify to how intelligent he who's moving them is. The Olam Hazeh is a world of puppets. It's welcome to the puppet show. If you choose not to see him with your mental eyes pulling the strings, your freedom of choice. We said it's all b'chira chavshit. But the moral implications are with no end. Because if you don't believe in him, then you're the boss of your life, because nothing comes from nowhere and nothing is going to nowhere, and you can commit suicide, or smoke a cigarette, or overeat, or don't eat one ice cream on this day, eat 20. I think it's immoral. Why? Because you're harming your body. Your body belongs to you. Welcome to the fact that there is a machloket that we have with the Western world. Our bodies don't belong to us. So what I'd like to do today is, I'm going to put here 2 empty seats. One is for a famous declared atheist scientist, not Shalom Aleichem, Richard Dawkins. Okay? And one, sorry for putting you so close to him here, David HaMelech. Okay? David HaMelech. Imagine them sitting there. If I wish I can have the two of them here. And they would have a debate, and I can sit on the side. Look inside, source number 5. Says David HaMelech. We say this every Shabbat morning. Only the one line that I underline. למנצח מזמור לדוד, at the top of the page, השמיים מספרים כבוד אל, ומעשה ידיו מגיד הרקיע. The heavens testify, they say over his story, the kavod of Hashem. Every term here, there's hours of discussion to start delving into. But just for now, David HaMelech is saying that the sky or the heavens are telling the story of kvod kel, of the presence of Hashem. U'masei yadav, magid harakia, the rakia is testifying to the fact that it was made by somebody who designed it. The underlying theme here is to be heard all throughout Tanakh and all throughout Chazal is that the world of Olam Hazeh speaks. Now please listen carefully and please don't fall asleep. And if you feel you fall asleep, go to the back and stand. It's not a busha. If I would have to hear me speak, I would probably fall asleep. And I would go and stand. That's what stentors were invented for. David HaMelech says here, and that's the way the Mefarshim also explain it, and it's one of many places, that the world speaks. כל העולם מדבר. אני אגיד כמה דברים בלשון הקודש. כל העולם מלא דברים, וכל הדברים מדברים. The world is full of things, and things in Lashon HaKodesh are dvarim. But dvarim, as ele advarim asher diber Moshe, are words. In English, the word things and the word words have nothing in common. But in Lashon HaKodesh, it's the same word because the depth of it is everything speaks. Everything speaks. You understand? If God is a physics proof of a remarkable scientist who's more remarkable because of his humility more than anything else, that's what I respect about him, I must say, much more than his brain. As Rabbeinu B'chaya says in Parshat Yitro, Torah never praises anybody for their wisdom, only for their midot. I respect him because of his humility. And his brains didn't go up to his head, they're there. But he's humble. And he got that compliment from Rabbeinu years ago already. As I don't understand a word you said, he raised his hand in the auditorium. But I like looking at you, you're humble. Sounds like Rabbeinu. Sounds like Rabbeinu. Same for me. If God is a physics proof, he will remain in Matan in the auditorium. But if God is the product of me listening to all the divarim, shekol advarim medabrim, that everything is speaking, then God travels with me wherever I go. And I would like to elaborate. I'll take a few examples. All I'm trying to do is to encourage people to think. But it means to think from today, ad 120, the day I leave this world. That's a Jew. That's a Ben Avram Avinu, who works on himself to think about anything that he sees. And he tries to bend his ear at anything, at a stone, at a flower, at migrating birds, at a waterfall, at the beauty of his wife, at whatever it might be. I'm listening to everything that the world is saying. If this sounds flaky to you, you work on your maturity. Not because I'm speaking. I'm irrelevant over here. That's David HaMelech speaking. Hashamayim is supreme. The world is speaking. If we don't listen because we're letting the Western world brainwash us, that's why. So we don't hear the subtleties of God speaking through everything in the world. When we listen carefully, we're able to hear the words that comprise everything that was made through speech. Shakol niya bitvaro. Everything was made through speech. God creates the world in speech. And the way Sfarim explain it, and the deeper the Sfarim, the deeper they explain. That it's the God's word that created it, that it's contained in that thing. Somehow the letters Aleph, Bet, and Nun is the essence and the life of the stone. And the light Aleph, Vav, Reish is Vayihi Or. A famous pasuk, Le'olam Hashem dvarcha nitzav b'shamayim. Your words, Hashem, are always standing in Shamayim. It's explained in Sefer HaTanya, 12 chapters, in Shara Yichud ve'emunah of Baal HaTanya. Life-changing perspective. At the right timing, I highly recommend. You don't learn the whole Tanya, just learn those 12 chapters. It changed my whole worldview. My whole experiences of life. I'm not exaggerating. Shara Yichud ve'emunah of Baal HaTanya. You don't have to be a Chabadnik to realize, I said this the other week, Baal HaTanya was a giant. A giant. In Halakha and in Kabbalah. An absolute giant. Kedai, 12 chapters, Shara Yichud ve'emunah. You want to learn with me? We can learn together. Creation, he says, and he shows it deeper and deeper. Creation is not something that was, creation is something which is. And the word of Hashem that's contained in everything in the world continues speaking and bringing out that life. The world is fresh, even though it doesn't come across us as such. Something is wrong. We have an optical illusion when we look at the world. If afterwards, some of you may have learned this with Rav Rafal, dear Rav Rafal, source number 6, the underlying part. Look afterwards or look inside now if your Hebrew is better. You see the beginning of Likutei Moharan. Mentioned Chabad, and Breslov mentioning Breslov now. It's all the same, it's all going to go to the same direction. Rabbi Nachman says the first relationship with the world is understanding that everything in the world has wisdom contained in it. And the job of a Ben Yisrael is to figure out that wisdom. What's the wisdom that's contained in this? What's the wisdom that's contained in this? What's the wisdom in a waterfall? What's the wisdom in a stone? What's the wisdom in clouds? What's the wisdom in rain? Everything is full with intelligence and wisdom. Look at me, listen to me, figure me out. Don't be bored by me. If I'm bored by the world, that means I'm bored by its creator. It's a slap on the face of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. I made a world full with meaning, and you're yawning at my world? How dare you? I'm not giving mussar to anybody, I'm speaking to myself. If I yawn at God's world any morning and wake up, something's wrong with the way I'm looking at the world. This is the way David HaMelech looks at the world. You hear this all throughout Sefer Tehillim. You want to put it in a more poetic way? The whole Bria is singing Takadosh Baruch Hu. That's why a Perek Shirah. How every creation is singing a song Takadosh Baruch Hu. Let's go into a few examples. Richard Dawkins, what do you say? How do you explain the fact that every single human being in the universe, on planet Earth, has his unique face? How do you explain this? How does neo-Darwinism explain the fact that every human being has a unique stamp on his face? Just, what do you say? David HaMelech, what do you say? My son Shlomo HaMelech says, Chochmat Adam Ta'ir Panav, the wisdom of a person shines off his face. We take it for granted. We don't think. We don't listen to what faces say. Every face is a different revelation of the He who made that person. It's a different neshama, clearly. What does it mean that when it comes to other creations, I have cows right outside my house. They all look alike, and it's not that had I been a cow, I would have been able to tell that it's not. Animals tell each other by smell, not by sight. And when Torah describes creation of species, they're created as species. Man alone was created alone. Not just Adam Rishon. I'm nivra yechidi. Everybody is nivra yechidi. Yosef is nivra yechidi. Aaron is nivra yechidi. I'm made as an individual. It's engraved in my face. What does it mean? It's thrown at my face. What's the meaning of my face? What is the meaning of the fact that every face looks different? But I'm too deep. I'm too busy with the movie. That's the problem. Western media brainwashes us, and we cannot listen to these subtleties. Because for 18 years we've been bombarded with things which look seemingly more flashy, more colorful, more sensual, more sexual. So just to reflect upon what a face means, they ruined our brains. Every person can make a cheshbon nefesh with himself. How much of his brain today is a product of Torah thinking? How much of his brain is a product of Western secular liberal thinking? It's not people's fault. You're crying, they put you in front of the TV, be quiet. You buy your kid a cell phone at the age of 10, 12, 13. No filter? What are we, Haredi? Ma pitom? Oh, something's wrong with our kid, he's 15 years old. We have to take him for treatment because he has internet issues, addiction. Surprising. Why in the world would a 15-year-old kid hold himself back? Why? For what reason? He's on a level of Yosef HaTzadik that his father is going to come to him. I don't know how Richard Dawkins was going to deal with the fact that every person has a unique feast. I know what our sources say. What do you say, Richard? All species, their spine, their hover around the ground. The human being is the only creature in the world that's erect. Stand straight. What do you say? I can tell you what we say. Human being is the only being that has a neshama coming down from shamayim. Neshama, shamayim, same core of the shower, sham. Not for now. And the goof comes from the aretz, as you can see at the end of Kohelet. And therefore the human being is the only being that has the possibility, the potential, maybe even the responsibility to bind together. And that's the vision that Yaakov gets of a sulam. You are a sulam. Mutzav arza, verosho magia shamayma. And that's why you alone of all species are going to be standing straight. Clearly, the antithesis to that is the nachash, which is completely flat. What's the meaning of the fact? We recently spoke about it in the Chumash here. I have so many different, I have a few different openings in my body. But I have only two openings at the center line of my body. The mouth and Eva Abrit, the reproductive organ. What's the meaning of the fact that it's in the middle line? What do you say, Rich? What do I say? What our sources say. That this is where I'm all meant to be aimed at. I'm defined as an Adam. I don't know what man means. I know what Adam, Aleph, Daled, Mem means. Maharal explains, Milashon Adama, a reproductive being. My whole being is to bring fruit to the world. People talk about Adam Tu B'Shvat. It's all true all year round. We're about to start the weeks of Shovavim in a week. It addresses these precious issues. How much do I channel my life towards production of fruit? How creative am I? Or Chalila v'chas, waste life to waste. Not just biologically, physiologically. I'm talking about every moment of life. I mentioned recently in the Chumash here. The Rambam became the Rambam because he listened to what the Rimi Gash told him before he died when the Rambam was still a kid. Don't waste a moment. Don't waste a moment. And that was the line that kept going on in the Rambam's head for his entire life. And he became the Rambam. That's the way Jews become Jews. When they don't waste a moment. And they don't waste any form of life. Whether it's biology, whether it's time. It all has life contained in it. Talking about reproduction. What's the meaning of the pshat, of the fact? Usually, if it was a different generation, maybe we wouldn't talk about it. But there's so much dirt and filth to wash away. So I will talk about it. Did anybody ever stop and think why all species mate face to back? And the only species that mates face to face is the human being. What do you say, Rich? What do our sources say? Because the relationship between a husband and a wife is so much more than but the bodily relationship that Hollywood brainwashes us with. We're not just using clean language. The depth of it is, that's really predominantly what's going on. A state of da'at, becoming one with. To become one flesh. The physical one flesh is only an outer reflection of the fact that two souls become one. We date and look for soulmates, not for body mates. With my whole being. I'm not saying that goyim don't look for soulmates. But Hollywood brainwashed the world. And as a Ben Avram Avinu, I don't want to be part of that. I'm going to insist on dating. Hopefully I don't have to date anymore in my life. You date, you look for a soul. Rabbi Yoel Rakovsky, my good friend, once said it at a panel at the DRS show. Just simple, beautiful. It's Rabbi Yoel talks. The face is where my consciousness is. The back, we know this neurologically. That's where our instincts go through. Face to face means two insides are trying to connect and bond. And it dresses up physically. How do you explain it, Rich? I know how I explain it. The body of a man and the body of a woman invite each other just by simple, straight thinking. Straight thinking. The body of a male and a male say they're not meant for each other. I should really tell Yeshiva that maybe I won't be able to go to the Shabbaton this year because maybe if I get to JFK they'll want to arrest me. Who knows in these days? A body of a male and a female meant to go together. The body of a male and a male don't go together once. Just it doesn't work. And number two, it doesn't produce children. How dare you go into my secrets of creation and waste it on that which inherently cannot bring children? Don't you reflect upon my world? Don't you see that love and reproduction go hand in hand together? Haven't you stopped and thought about the mystery of it? Because you're so wrapped up in Hollywood. Let go, grow up. When you're going to be 50 years old, you're still going to think like a 16-year-old. I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to people in the world. I'm named after a Navi who said, would two go together unless they were meant for each other? A male and a female, yes, they need to date to check out whether they're meant for each other. But physically, at least ABC, they're meant for each other. Males are meant for each other. I'm not saying it's simple issues. Somebody really think that he has attraction to men. Has to be addressed. You can't go on to argue with the very makeup of nature. And they will claim, yes, it's fine, so we have a machlokes, so we'll agree to disagree. I'm not going to arrest them, but they're going to probably want to arrest me. Because if you don't think like them today, you're old, archaic, etc., etc., etc. The world is full of wisdom. The world is full of thoughts. So David HaMelech would say, I'm just being a spokesman. You hear it all throughout Sefer Tehillim. The world is full of thought. It's just a question of how much effort I put into looking and listening. That says way beyond. It's almost a disgrace to Emunah to have an Emunah day. To have speeches, to bring a physicist. We can't, Manas says, so we have to do it. But one has to mature himself before that day and realize if I'm going to find God, it's how much my kishkis I'm going to put into that. You understand? An atheist scientist who expects to get a Nobel Prize is a walking oxymoron. And I'll tell you also why I think so. Because he expects to be respected for all the wisdom that he has managed to do what? To discover that which was there already for thousands and maybe millions of years. What about giving a Nobel Prize he was wise enough not to discover it, but to make it. No. Nobody made it. It's just by coincidence. It's all random. We're all swimming in a sea of meaninglessness. If it's all meaningless, why do you expect so much respect for what you discovered about meaningless? Till now we spoke about what the Torah doesn't even call a human being. The Torah calls it B'sar Adam. B'sar Adam! Al B'sar Adam lo yisach. Uvematkumto lo tasu kamo. Parshat Ki Tisah. B'sar Adam is flesh. Adam, Katuv B'Zohar, that's talking about the human being. That's the spirit of man, that's the mind, that's the human mind. כשהתורה אומרת אדם, התורה מדברת on his human mind, his spirit, his thought, his personality, his self. Him, the ghost behind the machine, as somebody once put it. We talked about the body and what it may speak or may not speak. I claim the body speaks constantly. The guy here says it doesn't say anything. I just randomly came. They randomly disappear. But let's talk a few minutes about the actual Adam, the human mind. If you take a chimpanzee, I said this every year, I wish one of you makes a lot of money one day, I ask you please, help me, not for me, the Tivarye buys a chimpanzee. We keep it in the biblical zoo, and once a year in Emunah Day we bring him. And instead of Rich, we'll have here his friend, and we may even go all together on a tour of Machne Yehuda with Daniel Yitzchaki and his crew. And you will see, and we will all see together, what are the chances that if you give an ape, and just let him stand there, the open part of the shuk, that he actually walk over to somebody and offer help. Or if he sees a little kid fall, that he'll go over and help him out. What are the chances? What is it about a human being that an ape doesn't have? That a human being does chesed and an ape doesn't? Huh? Where does that come from? From a frog? The human mind doesn't really exist. It's just a figment of our imagination. Yes? Figment of our imagination. Who invented me with such an incredible imagination that I can think that my imagination is not, that my mind is not really... See, I confused myself. Who made my mind in a way that's not really a mind, it's just a figment of imagination, in a way that I think that I have in mind, but really it's just imagination? Mamash genius! Richard Dawkins! You clearly think of yourself as a smart man, right? You have no clue, as I don't either. You have not a clue. What is that within you, your mind? Scientifically, you have no clue what that is that you use to develop all your atheist theories. Your thumb did not produce them. Your mind did. You have no clue what your mind is. I don't have any. Science has no clue. How dare you say something about the origins of man? The essence of man, you have no clue what it is. I don't have any clue what it is. I experience it. How dare you even open up your mouth? Where is minimal humility at something that you don't know? How about bowing down to the floor as I do, and I'm not embarrassed to? And you as an atheist, you may cringe to see me go down to the floor, and if it was halach limutar, I would do it right now. In front of my Creator. The moment that you look down on, and you despise, and you make fun of me. And for me, it's the most elevated and profound moment of the year that I wait for all year, to be flat in front of my Creator. What does it mean? A random world that doesn't come from anywhere would produce randomly by mistake, by chance, a being that can work on himself to become a better person? How in the world could that be? It's sheer nonsense. Likuli Alma. Why? Show me one person on the entire globe that doesn't respect people who worked on themselves and became better people. Show me one person in the world that doesn't respect that. Everybody respects respect that, including you, Rich. It's not shaykh not to respect. How can you claim that it isn't? How can something that come into existence from nowhere? How can a human being become a better human being? How can one claim that love is not a reality? People are obsessed with love from morning to night. All movies, all poetry, and you claim that's just nothing. Don't you realize the mind is the essence of man, and you don't know what it is? We have to finish off. This whole discussion, if I were to classify it in terms of Torah, I would say that it belongs to Sefer Bereshit. Just looking at the creation and listening to what it says, all the words that the wisdom of creation speaks. But when you go into Sefer Shemot, a whole new realm begins that will be spoken about this afternoon. Am Yisrael goes to Matan Torah. Later today, whenever you get a chance, you'll be able to do it. Source number 9, and the other in the second sheet. When Moshe Rabbeinu asks us, Kish'alna liyamim rishonim hayu lefanecha, go and ask. I'm sorry that I'm jumping all of a sudden, just because we don't have the time. Go ask, was there ever a case in history that God spoke to an entire people? I can tell you, me, Amos Luban, that I've spent many hours of my life in psychiatric wards, sometimes even closed ones, Baruch Hashem, not for myself. And many people I've met over the years are people who are either convinced that God spoke to them or that they are the Messiah. And so we also will say to anybody who will come and say that God spoke to them in the desert, God spoke to them and told them to start a new religion. Nobody ever on history claimed to God have spoken to an entire people. And that's the foundation, according to the Rishonim, of our entire Emunah b'Torah min hashamayim. And that's a whole different discussion. That's already going into Emunah's second floor. Till now it's Sefer Bereshit. The truth of the matter is, if that's where your belief in Torah ends, it will long term, it's going to be upsetting. I can tell you, almost daily, in my different Chumash Torah Shurim or other Shurim, people are sitting together with me. We let our minds be blown by Torah. Nachon, Nidi? My mind is blown by Torah, almost daily. In a Chavrusa with Yosef Kramer, in Shir with Nadi and his friends, with Aaron, with Yosef, it happens to be Toch Kedei Shiur. Was a wow! I'm talking for 30 years I have this experience, day in, day out. I don't need a proof for that. It's just Torah. It always astounds me. It's depth, it's richness, it's wisdom. I've been to university. I have what to compare it to. It doesn't even begin. Torah screams out from every corner of it. I'm not from this world, I'm from beyond this world. It's a wisdom of a different league completely. You understand the difference between the two? If Torah is proven to me this afternoon in the auditorium in Matan, because of Matan Torah never happening, is mass revelation, which has to be there, that's the foundation. But if it finishes there, it will remain in Matan. But if I go and learn Torah, and I let my mind be blown by Torah, it's going to go with me wherever I go with the Gemara, wherever I go and listen to a Shir, and wherever it might be. Not just the wisdom of Torah, the midot of Torah. There's an old man who sits in that corner over there. And when he gets up, we all get up. When he gets up, we all get up. When he sits down, we all sit down. When he leaves, we get up. Comes back in, we get up. Why? Because we truly feel and see that he's a walking Sefer Torah, which means he contains the character traits of Torah. And the second part of Tehillim Yutet, not for now, later, and that's source number 5. We say this every Shabbat morning. You see the character traits of Torah. HaTorah Tehorah, HaTorah Emet, HaTorah Metukah Midvash, HaTorah Mesamchei Lev, Meirat HaEinayim. Somebody who consumes Torah his whole life becomes that. He is a person who is Tahor, Matok, Midvash, sweet. He becomes a person who is Meir Einayim. 6th parak in Pirkei Avot, Chol HaLomed Torah Nishma Zocher Dvarim Harbeh, Kedai to learn it inside. We don't have it over here. All the long list of the beautiful things that happens to a person as a result of learning Torah, as long as it's honest and genuine. Maharal explains because that's the character traits of Torah. And when you consume it and you internalize it, you become it. for the day of the beginning of Shas again. You become Torah. This is not theory. This is reality. You see it in your eyes. You don't see it? Come, we can talk. I see it. And I'll finish with the following. And it's going to be elaborated, I'm sure, later this afternoon. In the same way that Torah, there's a difference between leaving it at Matan, where it is Matan Torah, Ma'amad Har Sinai Day, stuck thousands of years in the past, whether you take it with you every day, same thing goes for the story of the Jews throughout history. I said this to Rav Shlomi this morning, we shared our deep bond with source number 10, the Pasuk in Parshat Ha'azinu, very relevant to the trips that he takes, he, Rav Hirschel, and Rav Meis, others, to Eastern Europe, to the camps, to the shtetls. Zechor Yemot Olam b'nu shnot dor vador. The last instruction of Moshe Rabbeinu. Remember the days of the world. Listen, try to understand the course of human history, specifically of Jewish history. And when you go throughout our sources, and we stand today at the end of thousands of years of exile, as we're gathering back to Eretz Yisrael, I'll quote what I quote, I think, almost every year here. Rav Yaakov Emden, who was one of the leaders of Klal Yisrael 250 years ago, writes in his introduction to his famous Perush HaSidur, Bet Yaakov, I think we have it in the back, that had he been present at Kriyat Yam Suf, it wouldn't have been as big as a testimony to Metziut Hashem as the ongoing existence of Jews throughout the ages. And he said that before seeing the return to Zion, before seeing the land of Israel being filled up with the majority of the Jews again, 5, 6, 7 years ago, where again the majority of Jews in the world are in Eretz Yisrael. What does he mean? The meaning is that if Kriyat Yam Suf is your knowledge of how God cracks through the world, it will remain as an event of thousands of years ago. But if you're able to see how every single day, our moment of Jewish existence, throughout every single millennium, hundreds of years, 10 years of our grandparents and our great-grandparents and our great-grandparents, all the way till today, where there are so many hundreds of thousands of people who will be happier that we don't exist in this world. And indeed, as we claim on Seder night, isn't it true or is it not true? Every single generation, somebody has a problem with our existence. And they always turn into the dust of history. And we always continue existing. Ken yovdu kol oivecha Yisrael. Please say amen. Amen. Where in history did the world ever see, not just Matan Torah and a mass revelation, where in history did the world of mankind ever see a people who lived in their homeland, left it for thousands of years, scattered around the world, everywhere they went, somebody had an issue with them, an agenda to demolish them, to hate them, to despise them, to mock them. American Jewry, now today, Hashem Yishmo, we don't know where it's going towards. That always that pattern repeats itself. Here we're safe. And that always comes back as a slap. It was clear all along that was going to happen. Hashem Yishmo. And somehow they always turn into dust. And we always exist. And it's been told black on white. Ink on cloth. Betorat Moshe, in Parshat Nitzavim, in Sefer Yechezkel, and the Navi Amos, all throughout Tanakh. This is going to be the story of the Jewish people way in advance. Not what will, maybe what rather will be. You'll be scattered around the world, you'll be shechted, you'll be hated, you'll be persecuted. At the end of days, I'll gather you back from the four corners of the earth. Wherever you may be scattered, I'll gather you back to your homeland. And I'll bring you back here and I'll be again your God. This repeats itself again and again. If you listen to the Haftarah of this past Shabbat from Yechezkel, the beautiful Haftarah, we heard it again. Every person in this room is a sitting or standing, or me jumping right now, slap on the face of the Vatican. For thousands of years claiming that we were left by God. And that we just are disappearing species from the world. Oh yes? How do you explain the birth of the state of Israel? How do you explain the fact that we exist here, that we live, and we are all the prosperity on the land? The Jews have seen, and we'll finish with this for today, the rise and fall of the Babylonians, the rise and fall of the Persians, the rise and fall of the Greeks, the rise of Rome, Edom, Western world, and soon to reach Bezrat Hashem. There's one last piece in history. That's the big turmoil of today. And afterwards, I highly recommend you get a chance on your own with your chavrusa to learn a fascinating source in our Chumash here. I promise we didn't get to see it. I'm showing it to you right now. Source number 8, Midrash Pirkei de Reb Lezer, Perek Lamed. It's not the only place this Medrash talks about it. The Zohar also talks about this. How at the end of days, there's going to be another power in the world, not a world power, not a malchut. Ishmael. And they're going to be making a lot of wars in the world. And it's from within that, it gives a whole list of 15 things that in the future to do. Fascinating. Really worthwhile going through. But within the wars, learn through, especially the last part. And ask yourself, is this happening in front of our very eyes now or not? And the encouraging news, and we should all daven that it should happen in the easiest and most pleasant of ways for Klal Yisrael. But is that from within those wars of Yishmael, says the Midrash, Tzemach ben David, Mashiach ben David, will come. Take advantage of this day. Don't sleep. Try to take these messages. Toda Rabba. Thank you very much.